Home ownership. There is something about owning your own home that is just ingrained in us as Americans, isn't it? Now, maybe that's not you, but for a lot of us, you get into your career, you start making some money, and you really feel this urge to want to own your own home and stop renting. Now, maybe you checked out our other video on, are you ready to buy a home? And maybe the answer for you is yes, but still that's a different question than whether or not you should own a home. Because let's be real, there's pros and cons. So we want to detail those pros and cons of home ownership to help you decide, should you buy a home? Imagine yourself in your own home, this picturesque picture of you, your family, you're in your home, you own it, it's appreciating, and you have massive plumbing failure. Okay, so let's start off talking about some of the potential cons of home ownership. And really, the first of those I alluded to is just this risk. There's this financial risk of this hard asset that you have to maintain. And a lot of that could entail a number of repairs, which of course impacts your finances otherwise. And let me just say this. So if you were to even just kind of survey the people in your life who own their own home, just ask them about their first experience in owning a home, you'd probably get kind of a whole range of responses, positive, negative, everything in between. And that in and of itself kind of demonstrates this risk of the unknown, right? Of the potential risk of anything happening, positive, negative, repairs on the home that need to be done, maybe difficult neighbors, maybe declining neighborhood. And there's just this aspect of you're not going to have as much flexibility if you own a home. You can't just end one lease and go somewhere else. You're kind of putting down roots in a specific spot. And you need to be aware of that before you go and purchase your first home. Of course, on the list of potential cons to home ownership is the overall cost of getting into a home. Now, we have a whole separate video on how much house you can afford. We're going to go item by item on all the costs that go into acquiring your first home. But you just need to know that it's not as simple as just going from renting to buying. There's a whole series of costs, some of which you may be unaware of and unprepared for. And you need to know that going into the home buying experience. Of course, there's a reason why this idea of home ownership is kind of part of our American DNA. It has some great benefits to it, right? I mean, not only are you paying for your housing on a month-to-month basis, but you have this asset. You have this real estate that typically is appreciating in value. And so you kind of have this equity that you're building and something to show for those monthly payments that you're paying beyond just a place to sleep. And so you've got this asset that you've acquired and it's growing your net worth as you're making those monthly payments. And the other component of it too is if you've historically rented up until now, you've noticed those rents just keep going up. Your rent payment, when your lease expires, you re-up for the new one, that thing's going up. It's not going back down. So one of the attractive pieces of buying your own home is for a large portion of that monthly housing payment, you're able to kind of cap that, at least limit the amount it's going to increase over time. Now we have another video, as I mentioned, on how much you can afford and the financing of your home. And you'll learn that there are components of your monthly payment that will increase over time. But to a large extent, when you buy your home, you can have that fixed mortgage payment, and that's an added benefit. Here's the thing, you get the picture, right? There are pros and cons to home ownership. And let's say you take a look at the full landscape of that decision. You have your financial house in order. You could check out our other video on if you're ready to buy a home. And let's say you have all of that squared away and you look at the pros and cons and you go, you know what? I am ready and I can buy a home of my choosing. You may look at all of that and still decide it's not for you right now. And what I'm trying to say is it's a largely personal and preference component goes into this question of buying a home. And so for example, let's say you're a good candidate for home ownership, but let's say you see yourself moving to another geographical area in the next couple years. It may not make sense to put down roots and buy a home because you're gonna have less flexibility to make that move, right? Meaning you may have other life or financial priorities that would indicate that it's not time for you to buy a home. So there is this element of preference once you've squared away kind of the financial basics. There's this component of preference as to whether or not you want to embark on the home ownership journey yet. So don't let anyone tell you, hey, at this point you need to buy a home or you have to or you absolutely should not. What you should do is be well educated on your fundamentals, take care of those things, and then really look into yourself as far as what matters most to you and make the decision from that standpoint. So to help with that process, I mean, you may just need to sit down with someone, an expert, and discuss these topics, right? To do an assessment of, am I ready? Does it make sense for me? What really matters most to me? And that's where working with a professional really can be helpful to help clarify that. Okay, so let's say you've determined you're ready to embark on this component of the American dream. You're ready to buy your first home. You have your financial basics in order, and you've determined it does make sense to you and you should buy a home. The next step, I would encourage you to watch our video on how much home you can afford. We do a deep dive on the financial components of buying a home.